Hello. Today I wanted to present my theory on what I believe happened to Lisanne, Fron, and Kris Kremmers. Now first I want to say that this won't be very detailed because there's a lot of information that's conflicting between the police force, the investigators, the media, and then other media. If you go to Scarlett's blog, you'll see that a lot of information is conflicting and don't really know what to believe on some things. So this is what I kind of pieced together. First of all, I think it's important to get in their mindset. They had the mindset that they were going on a scenic tourist walk, not some hardcore, 4 or 5 days in the wilderness. Now, why do we know that? We know that from their dress. We know that from their supplies. We know that because both their phones were about 50% capacity before the walk. So, they're not, they have no intention, of going really deep into this trail. Their intention is probably to go to the summit, perhaps the waterfall that's beyond the summit, and that's about it. So they go and they go on the trail, and as far as Azul, the dog, it doesn't really make much difference whether you believe he started or he didn't start. It was the restaurant's dog, though. It wasn't the hostel owner, so you know that needs to be cleared up. If you have a video and you made a video and you said it was the hostel's dog, you probably should correct that because it wasn't. That's just adding more misinformation. But anyway, whether the dog was actually with them and how far he was with them, that doesn't really matter. That's kind of like one of the, that's just chasing down a rabbit. That's not really important to this case. Anyway, I believe Kris Kremmers and Lisanne Fron, I believe that, with relative ease. I know one of them was sick a little bit. I don't know how badly she was sick, but they went to the pharmacy. She had a cold or some sort of respiratory thing. I'm not sure, but anyway, relatively easily they make it to the summit. Judging from the pictures, they don't seem like they're that too worn out from it, and they take their photos. And then after taking photos of the summit, they made it in pretty good time. I believe I read in Scarlett's blog. I think it was Scarlett's. It could have been the Imperfect Plan that their time was like an hour and a half or an hour and 45 minutes, which was a really good time. So they probably made that trip, and they were thinking, well, we have a little more time. Let's go down the trail and see if we can find the waterfall. Well, that picture with Kris Kremmers crossing the rocky stream, that's about an hour from the summit. I believe that's what that's what I think. It's about an hour from the summit. That picture, I believe, is on the way to the waterfall. It's not quite there yet. I believe around when that picture was taken, when Kris Kremmers, I don't have the pictures on my screen, but if you follow this case, you know what I'm talking about. The one where Kris is walking across the rocks, in the creek, the stream. I believe around that, I believe soon after that picture was taken, they decided to turn back. They decided to go back to the summit, then go back to the beginning of the trail, and then they go back to the summit. Now, I believe that they actually came back to the summit and at least took more pictures, at least one more, because as I said in another video, that one picture, well, there's two pictures that are 6 seconds apart. Now they have completely different backgrounds in the 6 seconds, and I don't think in 6 seconds, you can move the amount that you had to move and pose to get that picture in 6 seconds. Tourists don't do that. If you go someplace and someone's trying to take a picture, usually, like if you're at Disney World and someone wants to take a picture of their kid with one of the characters and they're kind of further away and you're going to be in their path, well, you wait until they get the picture taken and then you walk further. Well, usually it's just not a snap and done. Usually people are real careful and then so 6 seconds between photos, that makes no sense. 8 photos and 1 minute, that makes no sense. So I certainly believe that it was some sort of camera manipulation, maybe camera malfunction. I don't know, but I believe that the photo evidence shows that there was pictures taken when the women came back to the summit on April 1st, and then from the summit to the beginning of the trail, I believe, I believe they got to the beginning of the trail. And I actually believe that they actually, yeah, somewhere in the beginning of the trail and kind of where the town starts, that's where I believe that they were kidnapped. Now, why do I believe that? Well, because people highly question this, but there are eyewitnesses. Now, people, say that these witnesses, they're wrong, they saw them the day before, and that's possible. But I'm just thinking that when there's smoke, there's fire. There was I think, don't quote me on this, but I think there was like three different witnesses that saw them in town or around the beginning of the trail, April 1st, when they were coming back. So I think the women made it back to the trail. Now, if you don't believe this, okay, if you don't think those witnesses are good, that's fine. But they were either abducted in the town or going from the summit to the beginning of the trail. Somewhere in that place, they were abducted. There was foul play, and that's when it occurred. And they were kidnapped. Their phones were handed over, and then soon after that, they didn't have access. I don't believe they had access to their phones with any of the 911 calls. People argue, well, if they were kidnapped, the kidnappers surely wouldn't let them use their own phone. I agree. The kidnappers would have taken their phone. I agree with that. They would have taken the camera. So, and just like when you look at the phone calls and like, and like the times where like the wireless signal were checked, it doesn't seem like if you just look at the times and the routine and it, to me it appears someone that doesn't appear like two people who are like desperate fighting for their lives in the wilderness. To me, when you actually go over like when the cell phone signal checks were made and the emergency phone calls were made, that seems to me like someone who kidnapped somebody and they're busy, they're doing things, and they have a little bit of time in their hands, so then they're going to go and try to set up the situation. So, it seems like a kidnapping. Really? I mean, if someone's lost in the woods for 48 hours, do you think they're going to try two emergency phone calls? I mean, get real, right? I mean, that's that's not going to happen. I don't believe in trafficking. I don't believe the cartel was involved. I believe it was a local kidnapping, and I believe it was a local murder. And I know some people think about the trafficking, and I guess this is, you know, I guess is whether you believe the DNA evidence or whether you don't believe it. But I believe that Kris Kremmers and Lisanne Fron were dead. I believe their remains prove that. I mean, there was a half a pelvic bone. To me, that indicates that she's passed away. And I believe they were abducted. Then I believe they were taking someone somewhere remote, somewhere actually in the wilderness. And I believe they were kept there against their will, and bad things happened to them. And on the night of the night photos, I believe that was an attempt for someone just to make it seem chaotic, to make it seem that they were there and they'd been, you know, without food and water for all this time and they were going crazy and they just took all these pictures. I think this was trying to show people that they in fact were in fact on the trail when they weren't, when they were being kept hostage. Now, there was a picture at least of Kris Kremers' back of her head. Kris could have been there with them. They could have killed her and then taken that picture. There was a picture that looked like it might be a jawline of Lisanne. Uh, some people think it might have been a finger of the person taking it. That when I see that it could be a jawline, possibly, could be a finger, possibly. I don't know. I'm not a photo expert. I I can see where it might be Lisanne's finger, and she might have been there too. They might have had her there. They might have taken a glimpse of her and then killed her at that spot. Or the remains show that there was a gap in the decomposition of Kris and Lisanne, of all the leg bones and the pelvic bone, and also other remains being found at that site. Friends, that doesn't indicate that those don't indicate natural deaths. that indicates foul play. Now, how exactly the foul play happened, I don't know. Now, I gave you my theory. Now, one thing I haven't added yet that kind of supports my theory is that the murder of like three people, I think it was three people, it might have been, I don't think it was two, I think it was three, might have been two, might have been four, but I think it was three people, like, that were, that people have speculated could have been somehow involved in this case. The murder of three people that people have speculated have been involved in the same case. Isn't that odd to you? Doesn't that kind of seem like a cover up? I mean, to me it does. To me, that's evidence that they perhaps even made it out of the forest, that off the trail. But whether they were kidnapped in town, I just say they were kidnapped in town because there was, because of those, three witnesses. But like I said, some people believe they debunked those three witnesses. So, you know, whether it was on the trail, that's fine. I mean, that theory holds up too. There is no picture of the people. So, I don't believe that Kris or Lisanne. I don't think. I think this was a kidnapping that was pretty quick. I believe it was, too quick for Kris or Lisanne to get their cell phone. Now, if someone had kind of wooed them off the trail somehow, I think that they would have. I, I I think they would have got the person's picture possibly. Tried to make more phone calls or something. But I don't know. About those nighttime photos, that was not an SOS symbol. That's people grasping for straws. I don't see an SOS symbol in the toilet paper. That's crazy. And the way that people have said it, and just have to take it for granted that there's an SOS picture. No, there wasn't a picture there that was crying out for help for someone to see. If you were lost in the forest and you were desperate and you wanted people to see you, you're going to make something obvious, okay? You're not just going to put a little toilet paper around and even a close up of the picture doesn't tell you exactly what it is. I'm talking, you're going to put logs together. I mean, you're going to do something. You're not just going to roll around a little toilet paper and have something reflected. I mean, what does that do? What in the world does that do? Now, there's a point that I think also needs to be considered, and I hope, now I know this is almost 13 minutes long. I'm trying to go faster. I hope you've stayed with me this long. The place where the nighttime photos were taken. That's roughly, it's either 3 hours or 3 miles away from Bukete. 3 hours or 3 miles. I forget the three's on my mind. I think it's 3 miles, but it might be 3 hours. But if Kris and Lisanne, if they were lost, the only way that the lost, let's get real here. The only way that the lost theory works is because this place was searched. This was searched by local tour guides, then more people. Now, some people claim they botched the search, but still, it was searched for at least 6 days. This place was searched, and you're going to be found. Okay, it's one thing looking for someone that doesn't want to be found. It's another thing looking for someone that wants to be found. Kris and Lisanne wanted to be found. They would have been found if they were simply lost. That's a gigantic hole in the lost theory. But this is also a big hole, is that the place where those nighttime photos were was close to Bukete. Now that was like on what, the eighth or ninth night after people had been searching for them. They would have found them if they were that close. The only way that this lost theory works is if Kris and Lisanne, they walked off so far out of the search area. But that place would have been inside the search area. See, it makes no sense. Absolutely no sense. So this case is, I believe they were killed. I don't believe the cartel was involved. I don't believe that there was, traffickers. I believe that this was a horrible experience for Lisanne and Kris, and they were taken off guard pretty quickly, and their cameras and I mean, the gap in the pictures. I mean, if you're lost and you're trying to even mark your space, you're probably going to take more pictures than they took on day 2, day 3, day 4, but they didn't. I I really, I really see no reason at all to even go by the abduction theory. So anyway, thank you very much. This is my theory. Have a great day.